Welcome to the history of Russia.
Imagine a land of mystery and grandeur, a place where history whispers tales of power and struggle. Welcome to the history of Russia. In the vast expanse of Eurasia, a story emerges from the mists of time. A story that began with the Slavic tribes, a people defined by their resilience and tenacity. These tribes, scattered across the harsh yet beautiful landscape, each had their own unique customs, their own distinct dialects. Yet they were united by a common thread, a shared lineage and a shared destiny. As centuries rolled by, these tribes coalesced into a more unified entity, a federation of sorts, known as the Kievan Rus. This was a time of gathering, of coming together, of laying the foundations for what would, in time, become one of the world's most powerful nations. The Kievan Rus was more than just a federation of tribes. It was the birthplace of a culture, a civilization, a way of life. But the Kievan Rus was not an island. It was influenced by its neighbors, shaped by external forces. One of the most significant of these was the introduction of Christianity in the 10th century. This was not merely a change of religious faith. It was a cultural revolution. It brought with it the influence of Byzantine culture with its rich traditions of art, architecture, and scholarship. The Byzantine influence permeated every aspect of the Kievan Rus, from its spiritual life to its political institutions. It helped shape the Kievan Rus, molding it into a civilization that was a unique blend of Slavic and Byzantine elements. The people of the Kievan Rus adopted Christianity, but they adapted it too, creating their own distinctive form of the faith that reflected their own unique traditions and worldview. This was a pivotal moment in the history of Russia. It was a time of transformation, of evolution. It was a time when the seeds of what would become a mighty empire were sown. It was the beginning of a journey that would take the people of Russia through centuries of triumph and tragedy, of glory and struggle. It was the beginning of a story that continues to unfold to this day. And thus, the seeds of what would become a mighty empire were sown. As the Kievan Rus waned, a new power emerged, the Principality of Moscow. In the 1300s, the sprawling Eurasian steppe was invaded by the Mongols, a force so formidable that it brought the entire region under its control. This invasion was a turning point in the history of Moscow. The Mongols, though ruthless, brought with them stability and order, and Moscow, a small principality then, was quick to seize the opportunity. It became a mediator between the Mongols and the Russian principalities, collecting tribute for the Mongols, growing in wealth and influence. The Principality of Moscow, under the shrewd leadership of its princes, began to play the game of power politics. They married into Mongol royalty, earned the favor of the Mongol Khans, and slowly but surely, Moscow rose to prominence. As we step into the 15th century, we see a figure of immense importance, Ivan III, also known as Ivan the Great. He was a visionary, a strategist, and a warrior. Under his reign, Moscow expanded its territories, became more centralized, and most importantly, he cast off the Mongol yoke. Ivan III refused to pay tribute to the Mongols, openly defying them. This was a daring move, one that could have led to the destruction of Moscow. But Ivan knew the Mongols were not the force they once were. He challenged them, and in the Great Stand on the Ujura River, the Mongols backed down. They retreated, marking an end to their rule and Moscow's subjugation. This was a moment of triumph, a moment of liberation. Moscow, from a small principality paying tribute to the Mongols, had risen to become a significant power. It had thrown off the shackles of the Mongols and now stood free and powerful. With the fall of the Mongols, Moscow stood at the dawn of a new era. This was the beginning of Moscow's journey to becoming the heart of Russia, a symbol of Russian resilience and power. And so, our journey through the annals of Russian history continues. From the ashes of the Mongol rule rose the Tsars, rulers who would shape Russia's destiny. As we delve deeper into the annals of Russian history, we encounter Ivan the Terrible, the first Tsar of Russia. His reign, starting in 1547, was marked by a series of major reforms and territorial expansions. However, it was his volatile temperament and ruthless methods that earned him the moniker the Terrible. Despite his notorious reputation, Ivan the Terrible laid the groundwork for the centralized Russian state. As the 16th century drew to a close, the Romanov dynasty emerged, a lineage that would rule Russia for over 300 years. Mikhail Romanov, only 16 at the time, was chosen as Tsar in 1618, marking the beginning of a new era. The Romanovs' reign was marked by both progress and turmoil as they navigated through a rapidly changing world. The most notable Tsars of this dynasty were Peter the Great and Catherine the Great. Peter the Great, ascending to the throne in 1682, was a force of nature. Known for his towering stature and insatiable curiosity, he modernized Russia, bringing it closer to the Western world. He expanded the Russian territories, establishing the city of St. Petersburg, a testament to his ambition and vision. Catherine the Great, a German princess by birth, came into power in 1762. She continued Peter's work, modernizing Russia's administrative and judicial systems and expanding its territories southwards and westwards. Catherine's reign is often hailed as the golden age of the Russian Empire. Under the Tsars, Russia transformed from a medieval state to a global empire. They navigated through the ebb and flow of power, through progress and setbacks, their rule leaving an indelible mark on the nation's history. Under the Tsar's rule, the Russian Empire grew in size and influence, becoming a major player on the world stage. The Tsars, with their vision and ambition, shaped Russia's destiny, laying the foundation for the nation as we know it today. But empires do not last forever, and the winds of change began to blow across Russia. The latter half of the 19th century was a time of profound transformation. Russia, once a mighty empire, grappled with the realities of societal upheaval. Beneath the surface of this grand empire, the societal fabric was shifting. The serfs, who once formed the backbone of the Russian economy, were no longer bound by the chains of servitude. In the year 1861, Tsar Alexander II issued the Emancipation Manifesto, a landmark decree that finally set the serfs free. The serfs, who were once considered property, now had the right to marry without consent, to own property, and to operate a business. This freedom, however, came at a price. Many former serfs found themselves in dire straits, as they were suddenly thrust into a world of economic uncertainty and hardship. The newly emancipated serfs were often given the least fertile lands and were burdened with redemption payments that kept them in a cycle of debt. This led to a growing discontent among the populace, a simmering resentment that would eventually explode into the 1905 revolution. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The years leading up to the revolution were marked by a series of events that exposed the weaknesses of the Russian Empire. The Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905 was a catastrophic defeat for Russia and a clear indication of the empire's declining power. This loss served to further fuel the flames of discontent, leading to widespread protests and strikes across the empire. The 1905 revolution was not a successful overthrow of the Tsarist regime, but it was a critical turning point in Russian history. It was a clear signal that the people were ready for change, and it set the stage for the larger revolution that would follow just 12 years later. The cracks in the empire were beginning to show, and change was on the horizon. The winds of change were blowing across Russia, and nothing could stand in their way. As we continue our journey into the past, we'll delve into the revolution that would forever alter the course of Russian history. In the heart of turmoil, a new power seized control, marking the birth of the Soviet Union. It was a time of upheaval, a time of change. The year was 1917, and Russia was in the throes of revolution. The once mighty Tsarist rule, with its grand palaces and opulent courts, was crumbling under the weight of its own excesses. The people were restless, their patience worn thin by years of hardship and inequality. In the midst of this unrest, a man named Vladimir Lenin emerged from the shadows. A charismatic leader, he held a vision of a different Russia, one where the workers, not the czars, held the power. This vision was the spark that ignited the flame of the Bolshevik Revolution. The revolution was a brutal, bloody struggle, tearing the country apart in a vicious civil war. But from the ashes of this conflict, the Bolsheviks emerged victorious, their red flag flying high over the ruins of the old regime. Lenin and his comrades wasted no time in consolidating their power. They established a new government, one that was based not on monarchy, but on socialism. Gone were the czars and their courts, replaced by a council of workers and peasants. This was the birth of the Soviet Union. In 1922, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or USSR, was officially created. Under the leadership of Lenin, it grew rapidly, its influence spreading far beyond Russia's borders. Despite the hardships and challenges it faced, the Soviet Union stood as a beacon of hope for those who believed in the power of the proletariat. And so, the Tsarist rule ended, replaced by a new order, the Soviet Union. This was a land of contrasts, of hope and fear, of progress and oppression. But one thing was clear: the world would never be the same again. The age of the Tsars was over, and the age of the Soviets had begun. The revolution had changed not just Russia, but the entire world. The Soviet Union, born from the flames of revolution, would go on to leave an indelible mark on the pages of history. The Soviet era was a time of great change, marked by both progress and terror. In the heart of this era, a figure emerged, wielding power like a double-edged sword: Joseph Stalin. His reign, which spanned over 2 decades, was a period of intense industrialization and modernization. However, it wasn't without its shadows. Stalin's policies led to the Great Purge, a campaign of political repression and persecution that saw countless lives lost. World War II was another defining chapter of the Soviet era. The Soviet Union played a crucial role in the defeat of the Axis powers, but it came at a high price. The country bore the brunt of the war's casualties, and the scars of this conflict are still visible today. Then came the Cold War, a chess match between 2 global superpowers. The tension was palpable, the stakes were high, and the world watched with bated breath as the Soviet Union and the United States locked horns. But it wasn't all grim. The Soviet era was also a time of innovation and exploration. The space race, for instance, was a testament to human ingenuity and the unquenchable thirst for knowledge. The Soviet Union made history when Yuri Gagarin became the first man to orbit the Earth, a feat that sparked a sense of awe and pride in the hearts of many. Cultural changes were also afoot. Literature, music, and art thrived under the Soviet regime, showcasing the resilience and creativity of the people. Despite the hardships, the spirit of the Soviet people remained unbroken, their grit and determination shining through the darkest times. The Soviet era was a complex tapestry woven with threads of triumph and adversity, progress and terror. It was a time when the Soviet Union, for all its flaws, stood tall on the world stage, a superpower in its own right. In the face of adversity and triumph, the Soviet Union stood as a superpower. But even superpowers do not last forever, and the Soviet Union was no exception. By the mid-80s, the Soviet Union was grappling with severe economic problems. The state-controlled economy was stagnating, and the arms race with the United States was draining the country's resources. The Soviet Union, once a global powerhouse, was on the brink of collapse. Enter Mikhail Gorbachev, a charismatic and reform-minded leader. Gorbachev ascended to the helm of the Soviet Union in 1985, determined to breathe new life into the faltering superpower. To this end, he introduced 2 significant policies: perestroika and glasnost. Perestroika, which means restructuring, was a bold attempt to revitalize the Soviet economy. It aimed to infuse elements of free market capitalism into the Soviet Union's rigid, state-controlled economy. On the other hand, glasnost, meaning openness, sought to foster transparency and freedom of speech. The Iron Curtain of censorship began to lift, and the Soviet people finally had a glimpse of the realities their country faced. However, these policies had unintended consequences. The introduction of capitalist elements into the economy led to widespread corruption and economic instability. The newfound freedom of speech sparked nationalistic movements in the various republics that constituted the Soviet Union. One by one, these republics began to declare independence, starting with Lithuania in 1990, followed by Estonia and Latvia. By 1991, the Soviet Union was a federation in name only. The final blow came on December 25, 1991, when Gorbachev resigned as president, and the Soviet Union was officially dissolved. With the dissolution of the Soviet Union, 15 independent nations emerged from the ashes, including the Russian Federation. The world watched in awe as the once mighty Soviet Union fell, not to external enemies, but to internal strife and economic instability. With the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia once again stood at the dawn of a new era. An era of uncertainty, but also of hope and opportunities. An era that would see Russia redefine its place in the world. In the ashes of the Soviet Union, a new Russia emerged. A Russia reborn from the dust of its past, ready to face the challenges of the future. The first president of this newly formed nation was Boris Yeltsin, a man with a vision of bringing the country into a new era of democracy and free market. Yeltsin's tenure was marked by a drastic change in the economic landscape of Russia. The transition from a centrally planned economy to a market economy was not smooth. The early 90s saw economic instability, with inflation skyrocketing and the standard of living dropping for many. Yet, amidst these growing pains, there were also glimpses of progress. The privatization of state-owned industries opened up new opportunities for entrepreneurship and foreign investment. Then, as the 21st century dawned, Vladimir Putin stepped into the presidency. Under his leadership, Russia experienced significant economic growth. The country's GDP increased, poverty rates fell, and Russia reasserted itself on the global stage. However, Putin's presidency has also been marked by controversy, with critics pointing to issues of political repression and corruption. Modern Russia is a study in contrasts. It is a nation proud of its rich history, yet grappling with the challenges of the present. It is a country where the past and the future often seem to be in a tense dance, each vying for dominance. The cities are a blend of ancient architecture and modern skyscrapers, symbols of a nation straddling two worlds. Yet despite these challenges, Russia continues to push forward. The country has made strides in science and technology, with Russian scientists playing key roles in global research endeavors. In the world of arts and culture, Russia's influence remains undiminished, with Russian literature, music, and cinema being celebrated worldwide. And so, Russia continues to write its history, a tale of power, struggle, and resilience. It is a story that is still being written, every day, by the millions of Russians who call this vast and diverse nation home. In the ashes of the old, a new Russia rises, ever resilient, ever forward-looking, ever ready to face whatever the future holds. Thank you for taking this journey into the past with me. We've journeyed from the first seeds of civilization in Russia, through the rise and fall of empires, to the vibrant nation we see today. As we continue to unravel the mysteries of history, your support means the world. Every like is a nod of appreciation for this journey we've embarked on. As we delve deeper into the annals of history, every subscription is a step forward with us. Ringing the bell, well, that's a promise to walk side by side as we continue to unearth the stories that have shaped our world. Your engagement fuels this journey, allowing us to bring to light the tales that time might have forgotten. So, like, subscribe, and ring that bell, not just for notifications, but to make your mark on this adventure. Together, we will continue to unravel the mysteries of history.